The biggest PFL news in years just dropped, and it feels like barely anyone is talking about it. John Martin just confirmed that PFL is ditching the tournament format in 2026. It will be a complete rebrand of what PFL is. Could this finally be the era that makes PFL matter? Call me crazy, but I think they're headed in the right direction. Let's dive into it. So as I stated, John Martin confirmed no US tournaments in 2026. They will do 10 events planned for America next year. So those 10 events will air on ESPN, just like the old tournament time slots on ESPN. Only it won't be that seasonal league format that a lot of people have questioned over the years. They will now act as a premium traditional fight promotion, similar to Bellator. You know, they'll still do the tournaments, I believe, for PFL MENA, PFL Africa. Not too sure on Europe, but I know those two subsidiaries will be maintaining the tournament format. But the flagship product is shifting. No longer will the PFL be centered around these tournaments. And over the years, we've seen people complain. We've seen people question it. We've even seen alterations as of the last year that the tournament was in stake. PFL changed the format because they realized people weren't getting the point side of things, how you could get a quick 6 and, you know, all of these factors that really weren't necessary when promoting a fight. So they ditched those last year, made it a straight up tournament, one-on-one winner advances, and that was better. It still felt like something was missing. It almost felt like, why are we doing these tournaments? A lot of the fighters in them weren't even the most highly touted or highest demanded fighters on the roster. You know, I mean, they're good fighters, but mid-tier in terms of rankings. And that begs the question of why it's even happening in the first place. And why can't we just make the best fights possible without restricting ourselves of that tournament format? And that is what is happening now. This is the biggest shift in PFL's history. For years, they have just stuck to their guns, been very stubborn on this, saying this is how the PFL is valuable, this is what makes us different, blah, 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 blah. And while that is somewhat true, I think fans were just burnt out on it. I think it was just too much to follow for an alternative brand. Maybe the UFC could pull something like this off, not PFL. I mean, it's hard enough to get people to watch an alternative MMA product, and when you throw all of these hoops in their direction that they have to jump through just to understand what's going on, you lose them. You know, it was overly complicated, and most importantly to me, it restricted the matchmaking. Now they can finally book fights that people want to see on demand. I know, novel concept. You can push stars when they're hot. I'm not going to say the tournament format didn't create any stars. You saw the regional format with but Dakota Ditcheva. Dakota Ditcheva came up through the PFL Europe tournament. An excellent example of the PFL format working. Was that always the case? No. In fact, most of the time, it wasn't. It would be a lot easier to just cherry pick stars that you like and that fans like and push them in marketable fights that people want to see. It sounds very simple, very logical, but it's something that PFL wasn't doing. And now they can. Now they can push the stars when they're hot, and they can tell these proper stories that we can get invested in without doing this playoff math and this tournament. I mean, it's too much. And this is what fans have wanted for years. Just fights that make sense that we can get excited for. And I just hope that it's not too late. I hope fans haven't given up on PFL. You know, they see those 3 letters and they just think, oh, it's going to be some background noise television. No, they have an opportunity to deliver 10 big fights next year. That should be their ultimate goal. Whatever they do overseas, I'm not as worried about. They tend to draw their biggest crowds in Europe and, you know, wherever else. I'm worried about the cards on American soil, where UFC has just absolutely dominated in terms of live event attendance and interest. I mean, America, it's just no question that not enough people know or care about what PFL is. So you have the platform, ESPN. Obviously, they're not the greatest partner. John Martin said it himself. There's a lot to be desired in terms of marketing and promotion from the broadcaster, but certainly the platform for a big sporting event, it's ESPN, and you've got the legitimate main event draws that you just have to get in the cage. Okay, none of this pay-per-view stuff. Just put it on primetime ESPN. It may be hard to get someone like Francis Ngannou on the card, but I mean that's what you've got to do. Usman Nurmagomedov, Paul Hughes, Dakota Ditcheva, Cedric Doumbé, Thad Jean, Chris Cyborg. I mean, they have so many solid names that if you stick them in a primetime main event slot on ESPN, I just see it doing nothing but favors for both the promotion and the fighters. Star-driven storytelling. No brackets, no points, none of this meritocracy that Don Davis is so insistent on featuring. Nobody cares about that, okay? Nobody cares. You need those big names in the cage doing exciting stuff. There's free agents too. Let's say the roster isn't where they need it to be to deliver 10 main event cards. I think they can. I think they can throw all of their resources and make it happen. There's also free agents. There's Gable Steveson, who, is a controversial figure. But if this is the fight game and seeing what he has done in terms of drawing and his talent levels, I just can't wrap my head around the fact that PFL has not even attempted to make something happen there. Along with Muhammad Makhachev, who we just saw a brilliant knockout from this past week. I mean, just a constant reminder that this guy should be fighting the best fighters possible, whether that's in UFC or PFL. And as for UFC, I mean, that bridge was burnt, and that's where PFL can shine. UFC's loss is PFL's gain, especially in terms of strong fighters like Muhammad Makhachev, who could really be interjected into those main event fights that we've been talking about with someone like Sergio Pettis, who's on a bit of a resurgence now after his thrilling knockout over Usman Nurmagomedov. But the focus should be stars, getting stars in the cage. That is John Martin's new era. And that feels refreshing. It feels different from what we had heard in the past from Don Davis, from Peter Murray. To directly quote John Martin, he said, "I wouldn't be brash enough to say we're the co-leader. We're not." And if you know anything about that term, co-leader, you know that has been the pitch from Don Davis, that PFL is equal to UFC. We're the co-leaders, neck and neck. That's not accurate. It's borderline insulting. And it's unnecessary. We don't need a co-leader in MMA. Nobody is asking for a co-leader. I'll take an option. I'll take an alternative option that I can watch when I'm not sold on the UFC product because it is watered down. There's a huge opportunity to provide something different to the UFC, but they were so insistent on just being their little brother or their twin brother, so to speak, but that was just not going to happen. It wasn't going to happen. John Martin is focused on quality, and that is so refreshing. It's not about the optics of what investors think. He's not trying to copy the UFC. He's trying to define PFL, which is still a young company and can be defined. It can be given an identity. This new mindset, it mirrors Bellator's matchmaking era, which was smart. It was entertaining, and it was fighter-focused. You were able to build stars, maybe some favorable matchups here and there, but you made moments. You got people to care. That's what PFL needs to do. And with that comes getting the stars in the cage, like Francis Ngannou. John Martin says Francis will fight in PFL in 2026. He seems confident. He seems hopeful. It is contractually obligated from what I understand. But this fight, let me say this. This needs to happen on American soil, in the United States, on ESPN. I've noticed a trend where they do these big cards and they're in Saudi Arabia. They're in Dubai. I understand it. I understand that's where the money is. That's what's going to pay Francis Ngannou. But just imagine a free ESPN main event with Francis Ngannou. The opportunity for eyeballs on the product for PFL is just, I mean, it's the biggest thing they can do. It's the biggest growth opportunity that they have right now. And they need to forget pay-per-view, focus 100% on exposure. Can people find this easily? And will they care? Francis Ngannou on ESPN would accomplish that. And this ESPN deal, it's not ideal. The negotiation period runs through early 2026 from what I understand. We could expect some major negotiations mid-next year. And I think it's safe to say that with John Martin's background in broadcasting, it could suggest a strong renewal or upgrade in those broadcasting rights. Whatever deal they sign, it's going to be a huge indicator of PFL's future and their visibility. You know, consistency and accessibility are such a key. I cannot talk about this without being reminded of Bellator's major mistake in signing the DAZN deal. The DAZN deal guaranteed financial security, did not guarantee that people would be there to watch. DAZN is a subscription-based service centered around fighting, and not exactly the highest demand fighting either. Assuming that people would subscribe to this monthly service for some boxing fights in Bellator was just foolish, and it was ultimately the nail in the coffin of the promotion. They cannot settle for a deal that will pay the bills and not offer them those eyeballs and opportunity for growth. They have to find something that is mutually beneficial. Look at AEW and how much success they have had with Turner. The ability to be a substantial number 2 option, drawing tens and thousands of fans to their tentpole events, millions around the world. That is what PFL needs out of a broadcasting partner and for their product to succeed. One step in the positive direction would be this Vice TV deal. PFL Africa and MENA have both signed on for 10 total events on Vice TV. That will start December of 2025. It includes the PFL MENA Championship on the 5th and the PFL Africa Championship on the 20th. It will include the Fight Library, which will go to Vice On Demand. I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be great exposure for these regional fighters and amazing for PFL. I mean, honestly, I'm shocked that they were able to land this deal for PFL MENA, which is not a great product in terms of production, and PFL Africa, which these are very new concepts that aren't tailored toward American audiences, but they made it happen. And Vice's audience, they are loving combat sports content. You look at Dark Side of the Ring, that's one of the top shows on the network from what I understand. And they did just recently ink a deal with Dada 5000's Bare Knuckle Boxing promotion. This could be great for the promotion, and it makes it easy to find. It puts more eyeballs than they had on these regional fighters. I mean, these were airing for free on the PFL app, which was nice, barring some technical difficulties here and then. But the big picture, I mean, I think it's a much needed upgrade, and I'm curious to see how the American product follows as well as the European product. But I think finally, PFL is finally focusing on fans over investors. For years, they have sold themselves as this UFC substitute product. How can they be just like the UFC on a fraction of the budget. Well, now they're just trying to be the best version of PFL. And that is how we can have some fun. There's not going to be any gimmicks. There's not going to be that smart cage, quick six. It's just going to be fights. It's going to be fighters that hopefully we want to see fighting. And John Martin's leadership may be what we needed to get us there. John Martin told the fans, he said, "Judge us by what's to come." And that sounds cliche. It kind of sounds like a toxic relationship. Just stay with us this one time, please. We're PFL. We know that we've let you down for 7 years, but this time it might be real. 2026 will be a make or break year for PFL, and they are finally in the position to win fans over. All they have to do is execute. If this all plays out right, 2026 could be PFL's breakout year. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe in this new PFL era, or is it too late? Like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more full previews and news every week here on Friendly Fighting.